Yeah, it's definitely been a journey trying to detach from that story, because for so long people started to recognize me like, oh, you're doing so good now. And that's how I started getting speaking engagements and stuff. People remembered my life. Like, I would get beat up and down the street. People would see that. So DC is small. People knew my father was buying drugs from them growing up. My mother would be strung out on the corner and I looked just like her. So my life was, people knew me, knew some of the things that I had gone through. And when they saw me sort of changing and becoming, you know, a different person, they would ask me to share my story. And then I just became so much of that story. And it was just like, I just don't want to keep talking about being a survivor all the time. And now I get to add these other parts of my life that I could be so much more than a survivor. So that's what that post was. It was sort of like me letting her know, like, it's about to be lit from here. Like, we could be, girl, we got so many other things that we are now. We're planting stuff, we growing, like, and so I sometimes, it's like I'm talking to her, like, can you believe that? We didn't have no food. Today I'm growing food. Like, it's just this, you know, and I don't deny it. I don't deny her. I needed her to get to where I am. For sure. But now I feel so much light and positivity in my life. Like, people that meet me now, they're like, you did not go through that stuff. You are lying. Even when I talk to young girls, they always like, Miss Christina, you don't look like you've been through that. And that's the way I want it to be. I don't want to look like, I mean, I have some of the scars and stuff that I know about, but, you know, I don't want to walk around inflicting my pain onto the world.
And this is what it looks like. And I think that's why it's important. Like, because when you have to ask, what does it look like?
Right. What should I look like? Bullet holes.
And the reality, right? And if you do got them, unless it's on your nose, because I got 3 of them on my back. You know, so
wow.
So much of my story, so much of my identity was attached to my story. And a part of my and because who I was directly related to what I had to overcome. And in order for me to tell that story, I had to create villains in the process. And my mother was a villain in that story. You know, it always had to be about me overcoming. Always had to be about me being shot, you know, going to jail, Had to be all of these things. And then I was like, hold on. I got to start telling different stories. Like, that person is, and that's why, like, when you were saying what you were saying, I hadn't thought about that 15-year-old James. And when I started thinking about him, I start, you know, because it's almost like I've forgotten him in a way. I think about him in a very high level very often. And even I'm speaking as if he's another person, but sometimes I feel like that because I don't feel like I'm in survival mode anymore. You know, I feel like I'm really like embracing the fullness of who I am, and that teenage period, the 20s and 30s are just periods of time. They're they're things I've gone through. They're not who I am.
Right.
You know, they're things that happened to me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so reframing the story and making sure that everybody can't do that. Everybody's not at the place in their life journey that allows them to do it. And sometimes they look at you like you're wild because you start talking about these terms like forgiveness and like acceptance and meeting people where they are. And you're like, how can you do that? I'm never going to let go of that. And I remember feeling and thinking that way. And also, so we've got to accept those people for where they are in those moments too.
Yeah, that's so true, because I used to have this like survivor's remorse too. Like, looking at some of my girlfriends and maybe them thinking, well, you're an exception to the rule. Like, and I didn't have the words back then tell them like, no, we can all start this journey. Like we could all leave that neighborhood, go to another one. We could all like do little things to not to go towards our healing. But I did used to feel like, well, maybe it was just my luck. Maybe there wasn't anything deeper. And then as I started to dig into my younger self and what I needed at that time and what I was seeking and what I was lacking, and then it reminds me of like Sankofa. It's no way that God was going to help me get through some of the stuff and I can't share with other people how. Like, people used to always just be like, just pray. And when like some days I couldn't get out the bed because I was so paralyzed from depression. And friends' advice was, girl, just pray. And so there has to be more. And that's why I try to spend a lot of my time really talking to women and young girls about the real life tangible things that you could do on a daily basis to make this a reality, because it's hard. It's real hard. It's hard every day. And so I think part of that too is, as when I think about my 17-year-old self, if I keep us tethered too much and go too deep all the time, it will bring back those emotions. And then I try to, like you said, on a high level, I think about her, or for the purposes of sharing for somebody else's sake, I'll pull it. But yeah, it's definitely like, you can't be, some people are so attached to their stories that they can't move forward. Even basketball, it's like a basketball player. Man, I used to give him 30. Like, okay,
I could have gone state.
You're 60.
Like, 60.
Right,
you got bad knees.
Right.